What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into the nuance of a topic that I have covered a few times in the past, especially with my initial concerns video for Modern Warfare 4. One of my big concerns that still holds true now that we've seen some alpha gameplay and everything, I'm a little bit worried that they've overcompensated from their feedback that they got in Modern Warfare 2, that's Infinity Ward's most recent game, where a lot of that feedback in Modern Warfare 2 is the game felt too slow and clunky and sort of campy. And I was one of those people that pushed back against many individual gameplay elements, at least, that contributed to that. And I did feel that was one of the big areas that held that game back, is it did often feel like it was punishing to play if you were trying to play as aggressively as you can with most other Call of Duty games. Even up until that point, I'm not even talking about the most recent Call of Duty games where you can play very, very fast. So if that's the case, and I was providing that feedback back in the day, why am I now concerned that they've gone too far in the other direction and overcompensated with Modern Warfare 4? Do I just not know what I want? Will I never be happy? Am I being hypocritical here? Well, that's what sparked the idea for this video. In my opinion, Modern Warfare 2 handled slowing down Call of Duty the wrong way. There are multiple ways that you can slow the pacing or the general gameplay down in a Call of Duty game. And there are multiple things that I think the franchise as a whole would benefit from by slowing things down compared to some recent years of Call of Duty, but not in the way that they tried to slow Modern Warfare 2 down. And just to be clear, I always feel the need to make this statement because the inevitable skill issue comments are going to be coming up. This topic is about what I feel is best for the franchise in general and the player base as a whole, not for me on a personal level. On a personal level, I tend to thrive with fast-paced Call of Duty games. I love the jetpack CODs and the past few Call of Duty games that have been very movement dominated. I've also had a really good experience with them and thrived with those games. In saying that though, for the community as a whole, I've been seeing a ton of pushback against how fast, especially the most recent Call of Duty games have been getting and how dominated those games are by a movement meta, where a huge chunk of the skill gap in those games is how well you can move and dodge shots and break cameras, as people like to call it, rather than how well you can position yourself on the map, for instance. And I think we're really seeing this trend come out, especially with the addition of the classic mode in Black Ops 7. That has been very popular, at least up until the matchmaking update that we got recently. Seems to have pushed a lot of people away. And then also, of course, the ports. The Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2 ports are still apparently doing very, very well, and a lot of people are still playing them, despite some of the big technical and security issues that have been going on with those games. So there's obviously a big demand in the community for that more toned back classic pacing of Call of Duty. And so why wasn't Modern Warfare 2 so much more successful? Why did the player count apparently drop off a cliff that year, as far as we're aware, at least from the limited data that we have access to, and the general sentiment in the community has been very negative toward Modern Warfare 2. Why did that happen if now Modern Warfare 4 is suddenly too fast? Well, obviously, I think this is due to a wide variety of reasons. One of the big reasons is simply how development cycles work in Call of Duty, where they typically work on a 3-year cycle. This time, it's more of a 4-year cycle for Infinity Ward, since Treyarch did 2 back-to-back games. But the feedback that was used to create Modern Warfare 4 was primarily originating from the feedback they got in Modern Warfare 2, and they sort of built the game around that feedback, and that feedback was things were too slow, so they have new leadership, and they wanted to make things go a lot faster. But then the problem there is the past 3 Call of Duty games we've had have been quite movement heavy and fast paced. And so I think there's just sort of a natural burnout and a lag with the feedback there, where maybe we did want a faster paced COD like 2 or 3 years back, but now that we've had 3 years of really fast paced Call of Duty games, people are getting burnt out on that and they're ready to return to a more slowed down or toned down pace that's not as dominated by a movement meta. So I think that's an important thing to acknowledge here at least, but I also still feel like Modern Warfare 2 made a lot of the wrong decisions when it comes to slowing the pace down, and there are other much better ways that they could handle this that would achieve the results of slowing that pacing down to a more controlled level and creating less of a movement-dominated meta without introducing all of the same frustrations that Modern Warfare 2 introduced with how they slowed things down. So let's dive into this a little bit. I think the big thing that Modern Warfare 2 did wrong here is they introduced a lot of penalties and punishment for trying to be aggressive and to use movement techniques aggressively. And the big one that comes up the most here, and I'm going to spend the most time talking about this one, so just be warned on that, this is how they handled sliding and slide canceling, where they removed our ability to cancel the slide animation. So you would get locked into that slide animation and you couldn't shoot while sliding as well. So if you did slide at the wrong time, it was often just a death sentence, and there's nothing you could really do about it at that point. You just kind of felt locked into that. and it was basically just out of your hands at that point. It was already over. And this change, I think, came as a response to people that were not a fan of slide canceling being too powerful and being so prevalent, where people had adapted finally to the movement that was introduced with Modern Warfare 2019, and slide canceling became that new meta thing to do all the time. I think they wanted to put a stop to that, so they removed our ability to slide cancel, which largely just killed the slide in Modern Warfare 2. The problem there is I feel like this didn't address the reason people started using slide canceling so much after Modern Warfare 2019, whereas it wasn't really a big thing before then, even though we still had sliding in games before then. And in my eyes, at least one of the biggest culprits here, and one of the biggest reasons this became so prevalent, was the introduction of tactical sprint. Because with tactical sprint present, that just became the new default method of getting around the map, because you're always going to want to get around a Call of Duty map as fast as you possibly can. And so, of course, you're going to use tactical sprint. People don't use tactical sprint tactically in Call of Duty like I think they had hoped or expected people to use it, where it's a very careful decision as to whether you should regular sprint or tactical sprint right now. That's not how it really plays out in 6v6 Call of Duty. You're in tiny maps and everything. You just want to get from point A to point B as fast as possible all the time. So obviously, tactical sprint becomes your default movement technique, but tactical sprint has a big downside, and that is a much longer sprint to fire time compared to a regular sprint. So how do you get around that? Well, now you slide cancel into your gunfights because it makes you a harder target to hit as you're transitioning from a tactical sprint into your gunfight. And so it massively improved your survivability when doing that to slide into your gunfights every single time and use a slide cancel so that you're not locking yourself into that slide animation, but you're breaking your tactical sprint animation, which also creates a very fast and jarring animation that's hard to shoot back at if timed properly. So by removing the ability to slide cancel, it didn't really address the root of the problem that caused slide canceling to become so prevalent in the first place. And to me, the root of that issue was tactical sprint. And unfortunately, I guess it depends on who you ask, but to me, unfortunately, tactical sprint is returning in Modern Warfare 4, and they brought back our ability to slide cancel because the feedback in Modern Warfare 2 is we should be able to cancel our slide. So I think we're right back to square one there, where now we're just going to be seeing a slide cancel dominated meta. However, I did want to also point out it's not just tactical sprint here because, I mean, with Black Ops 7, we're also seeing a fairly slide cancel dominated meta. A big part of this as well is the slide speed and acceleration that we've seen since Modern Warfare 2019 is quite high. And that also leads to a very slide cancel dominated meta. Which, to be clear, there are plenty of people out there that love this. They love it when Call of Duty is very movement heavy. They've adapted to that. They've developed those skills over the years, and they're very good at it. The problem is, this also turns a ton of the more casual audience away, and they tend to make up a much bigger portion of the player base. And after playing Black Ops Classic and playing the ports, I feel those really highlight what we've lost when the game became so dominated by a movement meta, to where positioning and knowing the map and getting from cover to cover and understanding all of the different pieces of cover and the unique lines of sight that they provide, a lot of that goes out the window when the cover doesn't matter nearly as much as how well you're able to move out in the open. And so this is why one of my bigger concerns when I first saw Modern Warfare 4 gameplay is tac sprint's back, slide canceling's back, and from what we've seen, the slide still looks like it's got quite a bit of distance to it, quite a bit of acceleration to it, and therefore, based on everything I've seen so far, it does look like if you're very good at slide canceling, you're going to be very good at Modern Warfare 4. And if you hate how dominant slide canceling has become, you're probably not going to be a big fan of this game. And unfortunately these days, I think there are a lot of people that are just so sick of that slide cancel meta. So what would the better solution be here, in my opinion, going from Modern Warfare 2 into Modern Warfare 4? Well, first up, I know I've been saying it for years. Ideally, I think tactical sprint shouldn't be the default movement technique in the game, at least for 6v6 multiplayer. I'm fine with making it a perk like Black Ops 7 did. I think that's totally fair. But by default, I think they should simplify things and also tone things back a little bit, or at least tone those really big bursts of movement speed back by just having one regular sprint, make it unlimited, so we're not going all the way back to the classic CODs, but just one standard sprint with one standard sprint out time. Obviously that sprint out time can vary from gun to gun with various attachments as well. Like, have that still impact sprint out times. I just mean don't have tactical sprint layered on top of that. That alone would help tone things back at least to a degree, while also somewhat reducing the reliance on slide cancel into a gunfight when you can just sprint out faster than you would if you were using a tactical sprint. But that alone wouldn't completely solve the issue of slide canceling, as we've seen in Black Ops 7. I mean, people still slide cancel a ton, so what else could be done here that doesn't introduce a punishment or a feeling of being punished for using the slide mechanic? Because that's where Modern Warfare 2 went wrong. Well, I think we should be able to cancel our animation anytime, but there should be also a slide to fire delay that can't be canceled. And we do see that in Black Ops 7 as well. You still have your slide to fire time, and even if you do a slide cancel, you still need to wait for that slide to fire time. But I think more importantly, it's time to really noticeably tone back the slide itself. And what I mean by that is the acceleration and the distance you can gain out of your slide. I think that should be toned back quite a bit. You shouldn't be able to break cameras in the same way that you currently can with a slide. You shouldn't be able to get from point A to point B faster when implementing slides and slide cancels than simply sprinting by yourself. It should be there as an option to use to maybe slide into a piece of cover, or try to slide away from a situation and evade in that way. If you're taking some shots from the side, for instance, you can throw a slide in there to be a little more evasive. And I still think it should be at least somewhat viable for challenging enemies as well, just at least one option to challenge enemies. I just don't think it needs to be nearly as powerful as it has been in recent years, and it shouldn't be the default method of getting around the map as optimally as possible. I think the ports in the classic mode have really shown that a lot of people are looking for more boots on the ground rather than butts on the ground gameplay. So circling back to Modern Warfare 2 and how I feel they handled that poorly, it seemed like their philosophy was to target the symptom and punish the use of that technique, rather than allow things to still feel very responsive and feel like you're in full control of your character, but adjust the technique itself so it's just less effective to use by toning down the speed and the acceleration to the point where you don't necessarily feel punished for doing it. You just feel like you're not really gaining any significant advantage by doing so. So you won't feel the need to be using that technique constantly when in gunfights or even when just traveling from point A to point B. So I know I spent a lot of time talking about sliding, but I think sliding is one of the biggest areas where things have gotten out of hand when it comes to the pacing and the movement-dominated meta of Call of Duty. One thing that I'm actually liking so far, based on what I've seen with Modern Warfare 4 that they have done compared to Modern Warfare 2, is it seems they have sped up a lot of individual animations. And I think that's great because fast animations make things feel a lot more responsive and like you are more in direct control over what your character is doing. And the main animations I'm thinking of here are the mantling animations, whether that's a low mantle or a high mantle where you have to jump up and grab a ledge with two hands and then pull yourself over. In Modern Warfare 2, especially with the time to kill and the general map sizes and pacing that you see in Call of Duty, it just felt so slow and punishing to mantle over something. And while that might be realistic for a soldier with a bunch of gear and everything, it doesn't feel right within the context of a 6v6 Call of Duty match. It just felt way too slow and punishing. Whereas in Modern Warfare 4, you can see a lot of those mantle animations are significantly faster. And I'm really liking the looks of that so far. Obviously, you can't go too far in the other direction and basically have you teleport over objects instantly with your gun up and accurate immediately. There still has to be some balance there, but in Modern Warfare 2, it didn't feel like they were using this as a balancing thing, and instead it almost felt more like they were using it as an act of punishment, and they really wanted to strongly discourage you from interacting with those mechanics. And that just felt wrong. I feel like you should be encouraged to use those while still having a balanced trade-off attached to it. Now, movement and animation speeds are very important when it comes to the general pacing of the game, but there's a lot more to it as well when it comes to Call of Duty. Another big thing here that I feel Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 2019 did a poor job with, and I've discussed this many times in the past because it is such an important topic, this is the way they've handled footsteps in their game. With those, they both had quite loud footstep audio that was very audible through surfaces and out to quite a long range. And then on top of that, they didn't offer a perk to reduce your footstep audio. And that significantly slowed the pacing of those games down, and at least relative to what you'd expect out of a Call of Duty game, even looking back to the classic COD games like Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2 when we're playing the ports now, having that really loud footstep audio with no counter outside of a limited use field upgrade, that made playing aggressively feel like once again you were being punished because you were constantly revealing your exact position in real time to any enemy within a certain radius of you, and the only method you really had to counter that was a limited use field upgrade. And in Modern Warfare 2, they doubled down on that field upgrade by making it even weaker than in Modern Warfare 2019. And again, that feels like the wrong way to slow the pacing of a game down because it feels like they're actively punishing you for playing aggressively, and Call of Duty is known for its fast-paced, aggressive action. Even before we saw things being dominated by a movement meta, we still had a reasonably fast pace attached to it, where you didn't feel like you were being heavily punished for daring to use the sprint button. And so that's yet another area where I feel like they handled slowing the pace of the game down poorly in Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 2019, because the only counter to that was a limited use field upgrade that they actually doubled down on by nerfing it in Modern Warfare 2. Thankfully, in Modern Warfare 4, we have seen that the Ninja perk will be in the game, so we will have that option to reduce our footstep audio. My big hope, though, is on top of that, that footstep audio is balanced in such a way that you don't feel the need to use that perk, at least in respawn game modes, every single game. Like, it should provide some benefit and some utility and some peace of mind, but it shouldn't feel like it's necessary in order to get around the map reasonably aggressively. Now, of course, that is a tricky balance to nail down. It's also frustrating when it's way too quiet by default, to the point where somebody can just sprint up on you without a ninja perk, and you never hear them, or you don't hear them until that last footstep before they stab a knife in your back. I get it, there has to be some balance there. I'm just hoping they don't lean too far in the opposite direction, but at least this time, if they do, we've got an option to combat that. So, props to Modern Warfare 4 for that one. And then one last element that I wanted to talk about here. Again, this is something I've been pushing for years at this point, but it fit nicely with the topic of this video, because this is something I feel Modern Warfare 2 didn't handle very well when it came to slowing the pace of the game down. This is strafe speeds. I feel like they went way too slow with strafe speeds, at least in general with most guns. There were a few opportunities with specific guns and attachment combinations where you could get solid strafe speeds, but I think across the board, it would be better to see faster strafe speeds, or at least more opportunities for faster strafe speeds with attachments, for instance, kind of like we saw with classic Call of Duty. And that might seem counterintuitive to be asking for faster strafe speeds if we're looking at how to properly slow the pace of the game down. But as we see in classic games like Black Ops 2, for instance, we had amazing strafe speed potentials, especially with the stock attachment on our guns. And when you have strafe speeds like that, that strongly encourages you to use strafing as your aggressive technique for challenging gunfights, which keeps aggressive play grounded and a lot easier to handle compared to the slide canceling meta. So this is just offering that alternative so you don't feel the need to be slide canceling all the time if you can strafe really effectively in a gunfight rather than being locked, standing still, shooting back at your enemy. I think the more you encourage that as the viable aggressive option, the more grounded things feel, and the more likely a casual player is going to be to at least comprehend what is going on in that fight and understand that maybe they need to get a little bit better aim if somebody outstrafes their aim, for instance, compared to the alternative that we've seen in recent years, where you'll have the movement gods just slide canceling circles around these casual players to the point where they just give up entirely because they don't have a hope of closing that gap. And overall, with the combination of all of those topics we talked about today, I think that's the right path forward in general for the franchise to help bring the general pacing at least back in the direction of classic Call of Duties without going all the way, because I do think, at least for newer Call of Duty games, there is still an audience for people that want a little bit of movement in their life and some faster pace than what we had way back in the day with Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2. Like, I don't think they should remove the slide entirely, as one example, for instance. So I think there is a bit of a middle ground that could be found there. I think we do need to move away from the movement god meta and get the pacing a little more under control without feeling like you're punishing players for trying to play aggressively. And that is where Modern Warfare 2 went wrong, in my opinion at least. It made the game feel clunky and unresponsive rather than just a game with toned back pace. And when it comes to Modern Warfare 4, obviously, most of this stuff is already going to be set in stone, but things like adjusting slide speed or acceleration, that's stuff that could potentially change based on feedback from the beta. And obviously, I want to actually get my hands on the beta to see what they've got for us, and I'll be providing updated feedback based on that. Right now, this feedback I'm providing is just based on what I've seen so far, so not calling for them to make any adjustments right now before the beta even hits, but it is just something that I have a concern about, I'm keeping my eye on, and I really want to see how this ends up playing out over time. Because I do fear, based on what I have seen, that this is going to turn quite a few people away, because the recent years of Call of Duty have really burnt them out on this movement-dominated meta. Now, of course, these are just my thoughts, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this topic in general in those comments down below. Based on what you've seen with Modern Warfare 4, do you feel like they might run into an issue with the pacing being too fast and the movement techniques being too powerful for many of the average players out there, or maybe for someone like yourself? Is this something that is a turnoff for you with Modern Warfare 4? Or perhaps not. Maybe are you somebody on the other side of the equation that wants them to lean into that movement-dominated meta just as much, if not more, than what we've seen in recent years? Just let me know all of those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.